All right, here we go. Stellar Crown format, not meta specific, tier list. Just how powerful do I think the decks are in the Stellar Crown format, irrelevant of what other people are playing, meta percentages, tech cards that people are currently including in decks. None of that's included. So let's start with a baseline for S tier. Don't think about S tier as S tier for this one as well. Think about this as just like tier 1. So think of S tier as tier 1. Usually, like when I think about S tier, and the way some people think about S tier is the next, another level than the average best decks. It's like on another level than the average best decks in a format. So just think about S tier as like tier 1 down to D tier, which is tier 5. Let's start with a baseline here though. Ancient Box, of course, is a D tier deck, and S tier decks. I got a couple of them that I'll put up here immediately. Got Lugia Archeops, super powerful, super versatile. It's kind of hard to counter. You got your Enhanced Hammers and Temple of Sinnohs, but like it's not being played all the time, and even when they are being played, like Lugia's still a good deck. Also, there is a little bit of depth to the Lugia. Like it seems like Shinchino, of course, is the best way to play the deck, the most powerful way to play the deck. But we see Rahul having success with the Raikou. We see Yurko having success with the Water Pawn. So it still has some depth to it in terms of options from like meta to meta, so you can still switch it up a little bit. And I'll put Regidrago up there in the tier 1 as well, probably the king of options as far as decks go. Like nothing has more options than Regidrago, especially on the power level that Regidrago's options are. Dragapult attack, the Kyurem attack, the Tina attack. Yeah, Regidrago has it all as far as powerful options go. Can't wait to see Raging Bolt in C tier. Yeah, I might end up with Raging Bolt in B tier. We'll see as far as we go. Now let's go with A tier. Let's go with some tier 2 decks. I got Palkia Dusknoir. This deck, I think, I called it underrated in my recent YouTube video. Noivern finally good because second attack relevant. Yeah, that's also another powerful option in Regidrago with Terapagos becoming like a relevant meta deck. Regidrago can play Noivern. You don't have to play Noivern, but you can. And that's like another thing that is so strong about Regidrago is there's so many things you can play in it. So when you play the deck and your opponent has to go against it, it makes it that much harder for them to play against. Palkia Dusknoir, this deck feels super strong, to be honest, overall. I called it underrated in my most recent YouTube video. I don't know if it's like overly underrated right now, but it is definitely like, I would say underplayed for how powerful it is. There's like, yeah, the deck is just like super strong overall, the Palkia Dusknoir deck. It feels a little cheesy as far as decks go, but it's kind of good. So you can't, yeah, if it's good, it's good, right? And I honestly feel like I don't even want to put Charizard on the level of Palkia Dusknoir. Like, I feel like Charizard is a step up below Palkia Dusknoir. So I think I'm going to put Charizard down in B tier. I'm not a huge fan of Charizard. I think Charizard's okay right now. Charizard will have its moments again. It's had many of moments. I feel like Charizard is taking a little bit of a backseat this format. And there might just be needs to be a new way to play the deck be discovered. But maybe Dusknoir is just the best way to play Charizard. That's what I've been saying recently. It feels like there's got to be something better for Charizard. There's got to be a better way to play Charizard than this Dusknoir pile, because it's so clunky and so combo based. It feels like there's just better decks that combo the way that Charizard can combo, like the Palkia Dusknoir deck. So what's the point of playing Charizard to begin with? So yeah, Charizard feels mid in this format. But a deck that a new build was discovered with that I think is pretty good, and I think I want to put it. I would put Dragapult. I feel like Dragapult just feels more powerful than Charizard right now, so I think I'm gonna put it above Charizard there. The Dragapult Dusknoir, the Ryuki Okada builds, specifically the Pidgeot builds. If it was a Pidgeot build, I'd probably put it in B tier, maybe even C tier. But the Ryuki Okada build feels like it can compete with everything in the format right now. Most things in the format. I think it still struggles a little bit against Lugia and Drago. Like those are just like slightly unfavorable, but like besides that, you can compete against most things. Go first, turn 2 Dragapult, take over from there, kind of deck. So put it in the A tier for Dragapult Dusknoir. Let's go to Raging Bolt. One of my favorite decks, but overall not a huge fan of it. I think it's okay. It just doesn't feel that powerful overall. Part of that is definitely due to how linear the deck is. That is part of why I'm not a huge Raging Bolt fan. That's why I don't think it's that powerful of a deck. And it has nothing to do with me disliking the deck and everything to do with me thinking about how powerful I think the deck is. I don't think Raging Bolt is that powerful of a deck. It's not like leagues under something like even a Lugia deck, but you know, it's like 3 baby steps away from a Lugia deck. So it ends up in the C tier or tier 4. Lose to 1 Noivern attack? Not quite, but another deck that I feel like I'm a little bit under tested with in the current format, so it might have more power than I currently realize is Gardevoir. Gardevoir definitely struggles against the Dusknoir shenanigans. It's definitely tough, but the Turbo Gardevoir deck, the Henry Chow build that he used to win Baltimore, might still be powerful enough to even put Gardevoir up into like tier 2. But I don't know, every time I go up, I haven't like really played with Gardevoir very much. Every time I watch the deck get played or I play against it myself, it just kind of gets wrecked. So I'm pretty comfortable with putting Gardevoir down here in C tier with Raging Bolt. They can hang out there together. Terapagos Dusknoir, this deck, honestly, it's solid, but I think it doesn't feel that ridiculously good. I've actually put some time in playing with it now recently. Literally just played Giovanni's build, and it feels like a solid deck. I almost rate it, I think I rate it higher than Charizard, but it's hard for me to put it, I don't rate it as highly as Dragapult or Palkia Dusknoir. Maybe I do. Maybe it does just fit in tier 2 though, with the rest of these other 2 decks. It feels weird. It feels like if there was another tier, I don't want to put it in Charizard's tier, but I would want to put it less in Charizard's tier than put it in their tier. So actually, I guess I do just put it in tier 2. I guess it does just kind of fit in tier 2. Because it feels like it's a step above Charizard right now, for sure. It doesn't feel quite as powerful as Dragapult and Palkia though. Those feel a little bit more powerful, but not by a whole ton. So I think I'd put it closer to those than I'd put it closer to Charizard, to be honest. Snorlax Stall, I think it's a solid B here. Super meta dependent deck. Really depends on what is popular, what people are playing. I feel like as we're getting towards the later part of the Stellar Crown format, with so many more Dusknoir decks popping up, I think it gets a little bit more difficult for it. Because they have ways to just be like relentlessly aggressive. Usually, even if decks have answers to stuff like Mimikyu or like fighting Ogerpon, you would have to like take a turn to like set up your answer, or like maybe you can like set up the answer and just KO the Mimikyu. But against Dusknoir decks, they're like, okay, Candy Dusknoir KO your Mimikyu. Now you have to push up your Snorlax, KO your Snorlax, Iono you to 4. Like, good luck, you know? So it definitely, the Dusknoir decks are a lot harder for Snorlax to handle. They're not impossible, it feels like, but them having those huge swing turns where they deal with multiple Pokemon in a turn, as soon as like turn 2, you can just like lose to that like pretty aggressively. So yeah, I don't rate Snorlax Stall super highly in this format overall, but it's still okay. It's still okay. Iron Thorns, I think, is also a pretty okay deck. Also pretty meta dependent, but I think the metas in this format are like definitely way better for Iron Thorns than not. Yeah, Iron Thorns I think is overall like a pretty solid deck in this format. The way we're shifting towards now, I do have a couple question marks about Iron Thorns. I don't actually know how good your Dragapult matchup is. That one mostly feels like it's a unfavorable matchup. And then Terapagos matchup is still a question mark for me as well. If both these matchups are actually just bad for Iron Thorns, I would probably put Iron Thorns down here in C. Maybe even consider D tier for Iron Thorns if it can't handle either of these decks. But if it is at least favored against one of them, would have to imagine you can definitely be fine against Terapagos. Then I'm pretty comfortable with putting Iron Thorns up here in B tier. But if it can't beat either of these decks consistently at all, then I would definitely put them down in D tier. So that's like where one of my question marks in the format is right now, is how good is Iron Thorns? So I'm not really sure about these two matchups, to be honest. So I'm comfortable putting it in B here, just saying we can hopefully get to like 50-50s against both of those. Miraidon, also a pretty okay deck in the format. I almost want to put it in B tier, but I'm not sure. Miraidon fares, the thing is, like, as we're getting to the later part of this format, like you're good against Lugia, you fare fine against Drago, and then I feel like you're decent against the Dusknoir decks, because it's harder for Dusknoir decks to like be super aggressive against the 2 prize Pokemon, and you have Iron Hands, which is just really, really good. Someone opens up like a Fan or a Hoot, and you just start handsing. You get hands turn 1 swing, and it's gonna be really hard for them to answer your hands. So I don't know. Miraidon here, I definitely want to put a little bit. I definitely feel pretty comfortable about Miraidon, to be honest. It's got more depth than something like the Raging Bolt. Now the Raging Bolt is like a bunch of big 2 prize Pokemon as well, but just the fact that it doesn't have Iron Hands is like a pretty big deal. The fact that it doesn't have Iron Hands. Now it does have Briar, but it's a little bit easier to play around Briar and harder to take advantage of it in the late game when you're getting like Ionoed. Whereas Miraidon is using Iron Hands like, you know, turn 1, turn 2. So I give Miraidon a little bit of an edge over something like the Raging Bolt because of that. A little bit more depth to the deck. Pidgeot Control, I have nowhere to put this. It seems okay. Its online tournament results are okay. Its IRL tournament results are pretty terrible, but that really does come down to when do the good control players show up and decide to play the deck, and it's not always. So I think I'm pretty comfortable with putting Control in B tier for right now. Kind of like the same reason as Snorlax, where it's just like, yeah, I think it's like fine. The deck's fine. Yeah, it's hard to put, with how many options Controls has, it's hard for me to want to put it lower than B. even if the deck is just kind of mid. Turbo Roaring Moon. Honestly, I've been thinking about this one recently because I feel like Turbo Roaring Moon might be the best deck to play Judge in. And I think Judge is really, really good right now up against all these decks playing Rotom, or you like the Terapagos deck with the Hoot Hoot. They Hoot Hoot, or they use Fan Rotom. They put the Noctowls in their hand. They're sitting with them in their hand. They want to use their Noctowls next turn. They have like a big hand developed to use next turn. And Turbo Roaring Moon can go like turn 1 Judge plus knock out your active pretty consistently. Like, it's not too hard to get there. Sometimes it can be hard to find the Judge. But being able to disrupt the hand that aggressively is pretty nice. Also can do that against Dragapult, and you can do that against the Charizard deck as well, which are all like pretty popular decks right now. So I like the idea of it for that, but I'm not sure if it's actually good enough. If that's enough to carry it. So I'm gonna put it in C tier for now, I think. I don't know if that's enough to carry it up to B tier. So we'll keep them in C. Terapagos Pidgeot is literally just Terapagos Dusknoir, so we're gonna get rid of that one. I didn't realize we had that there. Palkia Noctowl, I literally just think is bad Raging Bolt. I think if you're gonna play a Palkia deck, you should play Palkia Dusknoir. The one of the reasons to play Palkia, the biggest thing about Palkia is being able to enable an aggressive Radiant Greninja attack. Palkia Dusknoir does that way better. At the trade-off of Palkia Noctowl with their Terapagos, with potential for a late game Briar. Also, they can put the Stadium in play to get a really big bench and hit really hard, but it's not worth the trade-off, I don't think, at all. So yeah, Palkia Noctowl, I think it's just bad Raging Bolts and bad Palkia. Like, it's just like, if you're gonna play a 2-prize deck that just hits for big one-hit KOs, you play Raging Bolts. And if you're gonna play a Palkia deck to enable Radiant Greninja as much as possible, you play Palkia Dusknoir. So it's just like, this deck doesn't make any sense in the current format, from what I can tell. Bad version of a bad deck, something like that. Golden Go, actually, I kind of like Golden Go. Once again, just played with it recently, and I know what some of you are probably thinking when you're watching me say that about Palkia. Like, Azul, you say to not compare decks in that way, which is fair. I don't like to compare decks in that way. I don't like to compare Palkia Noctowl to Raging Bolt. I don't like to comparing Palkia Noctowl to Palkia Dusknoir. I'm fine with, because it's like, well, what's the best way to play Palkia? What is the best Palkia deck? What are all the good things about Palkia? What can we play with Palkia that gets the best out of Palkia? So comparing Palkia Dusknoir to Palkia Noctowl, I'm 100% fine with that comparison, because we're worried about what is the best Palkia? What is the best way to take advantage of Palkia? What cards can we play with Palkia to get the most out of Palkia? And the answer is Palkia Dusknoir, not Palkia Noctowl. And at that point, Palkia is just a bad Raging Bolt, I feel like. At that point, it just becomes bad Raging Bolt, because you can't attack on your first turn going second for a big knockout. But you can do that with Raging Bolt. But in general, don't compare decks in that kind of way. Don't compare decks makes a tier list. Well, no, not like that. We're putting power levels on the decks. The other comparison thing is the thing I say not to do. Yeah, putting power levels on a deck is like fine. And the last thing is Cloth. Honestly, Cloth is like okay right now. I don't think it's as... I was kind of hype on Cloth after seeing it get top 4 at Joinville. I was like, that's sick. And I thought about it. I was like, ooh, that kind of makes sense. It seems like you have a good matchup into the Raging Bolts, and you can beat Charizard with the Electrode Super Glasses combo. But when you think about it a little bit more and you see what are actually the most powerful decks in this format, Terapagos Dusknoir's tough for Cloth. Dragapult Dusknoir, that's really tough for Cloth. Palkia Dusknoir, honestly, that seems kind of tough for Cloth. Lugia, that's tough for Cloth. Regidrago, that's tough for Cloth. But you do Stomp, Raging Bolt, and you're an aggressive deck, so you're, you know, kind of chill. I'm not going to put it in D tier. I'm going to put Cloth in C tier here. Yeah. Because all those things, even though I said all those bad things about it, like, it's still an aggressive deck that it can keep up with these the slower decks. Like, if you go second against Dragapult, you can just overrun them sometimes. You go second against a Charizard deck, you just overrun them. Same thing even with like a Terapagos Dusknoir potentially. Oh no, wait, your Terapagos matchup is good because Terapagos is weak to fighting. In my head, I was like thinking you can't even one-hit KO the Terapagos. But no, but you have a good Terapagos matchup as Cloth. So I'm comfortable putting Cloth up here in C tier overall. Okay, that's it. And this is just how powerful I think the decks are in the format, not like a specific meta or anything like that. Just across the board, what are the most powerful decks? And then the things that I'm unsure about, I guess I'll go through this right now. I'm pretty confident in my tier 1 here, or S tier, whatever you want to call it. Pretty confident in this tier as well. The only thing, Terapagos Dusknoir is the one I'm the most iffy on, but it feels more powerful than everything down here. but it doesn't feel quite as powerful as Dragon Ball Polka. This is where someone would add like a tier 2.5, but I hate doing 2.5 tiers, so I'm gonna keep it up here in tier 2. Iron Thorns, I could see being all the way down here if it can't actually keep up with either of these decks. Like I don't know everything about the format, but this is just what I know. And then Guardy, I could also see being quite a bit higher as well. Like if Turbo Guardy, the Henry Chow double candy Guardy, can actually keep up with some of these Dusknoir decks a little bit more consistently than it seems like it can, then I could see Gardevoir even being all the way up here in tier 2, to be honest. But I haven't messed around with that at all recently, so my take on Gardevoir right now is that it's probably not great. And yeah, that's it. Stellar Crown tier list.